Now that is strange. I apologize. We are going, but for some reason, John, I don't have your video. It's no big deal. It's going to be real casual. We're just going to roll with it. Today should be fun. This is Phil here with the USL Show. We got Ryan Allen with the USL Show, and joining us as well is John Morrissey of USL Tactics, who we've been collaborating with for a long time. John, how are you doing, man?
Doing really well, and so happy to be here on opening day.
Yeah, me too. I'm so glad to have you. And, it's been fun talking for 2 minutes at a time, basically, for the last several weeks. And we get to spend a little bit longer now. We better jump into it. I know you don't have a lot of time. Let's start with the two matchups. What we decided to do was kind of pick a player from each team for the two matchups tonight. The two matchups being Louisville versus Atlanta United 2 and Oklahoma City Energy versus FC Tulsa. Let's start with Louisville versus Atlanta United 2, ATL UTD 2 in the first season at least, and that seems to have faded, thank God. You said you wanted to start with Sean Tosh. That's a good choice.
Yeah, I think he's really at the core of what this team does defensively. When you look at him from the statistical profile, he's in the top quarter of the league for defensive actions, for aerial wins. But I think his passing is so key to the possession sort of style that Louisville tries to pursue. He's not the most progressive passer. He can hit a long pass, and he does so with a lot of accuracy. But it's just funneling the ball to the guys who tend to initiate attacks. Think about Oscar Jimenez. Think about Speedy Williams in the past. And now he's going to have to forge that connection to Tyler Gibson in the midfield. So he's someone who, if you think about this matchup and think about this Atlanta side, which isn't necessarily the strongest, but is one that is going to press you, is going to use those youthful legs to really try to get into you and prevent buildup. He'll be an important player in this game.
Yeah, I always root for the underdog, so that means I'm pretty much always rooting against Louisville, and I just view Tosh as the spoiler. You know what I mean? Like any chance that comes in, Tosh is usually there to kind of spoil those chances for the most part. Now let's move to Atlanta United 2. I was not excited about this matchup, but once you put this name on this list, I remembered, oh yeah, Robbie Mertz plays for Atlanta United 2, and he will bring some life to this squad this year for sure, right?
Yeah, and isn't it crazy that he's playing for Atlanta United too right now? He's someone who's been so solid for a number of years in Pittsburgh. Really, just an impressive midfielder.
Mm-hmm.
What he gives you creativity-wise is invaluable. So Atlanta was dead last in the league for chance creation last season, but I didn't hate some of the talent they had deeper in that midfield. I mean, if you think about Will Riley, who I've talked about a little bit on the USL Tactics account, who I think it has a ton of potential in that holding sort of role. Well, you put Robbie Mertz in front of him, who 70th percentile across the league for the shots added. I mean, high XG, high XA. And he's also someone who contributes defensively. If you think about just going in and week out within that Bob Lilly system, he'll be someone who, especially given Atlanta's press, has to contribute to breaking up that build-up play I was talking about in terms of Tosh and the way they build up through that defensive midfield. So I think Mertz is really going to be key, not only in this game and trying to keep Atlanta competitive and maybe able to get a point out of it, but just looking forward, can he keep them competitive in games against worse teams? Can he earn himself a shot up with the senior side, really getting that call up to be a depth piece, which would be huge for him, and I think is a lot of the reason that you've seen him make this move to Atlanta United too.
Yeah, and you think about sometimes with Atlanta, they've had a couple guys in the senior team that are like real role model type players. He can definitely be that for these kids coming up from the academy and trying to work their way up to the senior squad as well. That'll be fun to watch tonight, especially. I'm really glad he's there for me to kind of focus on. I'm also glad you gave us someone else to watch. Who's that holding midfielder, the young one we should watch for?
Will Riley. I believe he's maybe 19, 20 years old. Has positional sense beyond that by a long shot. You watch him and just see a really smart player with a lot of potential. He's a little bit slight, which would be the knock about him maybe moving up to the MLS side. But I think at a minimum, he can be someone who holds down a USL midfield for years to come.
And maybe even, I assume he's American by the sound of his name.
Yep.
So Someone that young, if I remember your videos, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the kid can receive the ball in a half turn, and that's something you don't see in young kids like that.
Absolutely, really competent player on the ball at such a young age. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I like that. Just a little bit of news that I kind of caught yesterday randomly on Twitter was Gabriel Hines, the coach of Atlanta United senior team, complaining about the fact that he wasn't able to just call any academy player up. But the cool thing about that is that he sees a lot of those kids as worthy of a call up, maybe even today, and they got not the Open Cup, they got CCL on the back burner here, or maybe even the front burner is the way we should look at that. So he could use the depth. That's something cool. So maybe we're in for a bit of a surprise tonight as far as what the kids can do. We'll see. Ryan, do you have any thoughts about this matchup today?
Louisville City is unbeaten against Atlanta United 2 all time. However, the two clubs have not met since 2019. So it's really of an interesting matchup. But as we had said from our rankings preview, that Louisville is one of the best three teams within the league right now, and they should be on track to return to the Eastern Conference Final if things go well for them this year. That their goal should be USL Cup or bust.
Yeah, that's good stuff there, Ryan. I'm so glad you signed on early with us. I wasn't sure whether we were going to have anyone else, and this has been a lot of fun. Um, this matchup tonight, any thoughts from you, John, about what it might look like? I know it's kind of hard. You mentioned that obviously Louisville is a possession types team, and so what do you think the two teams might look like in the matchup tonight?
Yeah, so I did a little thread on this game where I sort of pointed to the battle in the central midfield as the key. Louisville will run out with that sort of 4-1-4-1, 4-3-3-ish setup. Atlanta tends to run with more of a 4-2-3-1, what you would expect from pretty much any side as a baseline. But the way that Louisville sets up those wingers, Ownby and Halpino typically, can tuck into the middle and really create overloads where you've got 4 or 5 bodies. So if they do that, how does Atlanta respond? If the midfielders track, suddenly you've got time for guys like Corbin Bone to pick up the ball and have whatever pass they want. If the Atlanta fullbacks are the ones who are tracking those runs, Oscar Jimenez is streaking down the side of the pitch into all the space that he possibly could ever want. That spells trouble for this Atlanta side. So I'm, let's just say, doubting their chances here.
Yeah, same here. Not to mention, I think the thing I like to harp on is, they weren't as bad about this last year, but 2 years ago, Atlanta United 2 would you had to play out of the back. You had to play out of the back. And these experienced independent veteran players would just trash these young center backs as they're trying to pass the ball around. So I imagine there will be some targeting for sure in that way if they try that too much. But a lot of these teams have gotten a little more pragmatic in the USL competition in the recent past. So we'll see about that. Let's move on to the other competition. John, I thought I had to race through this, and I'm so glad we have 15 minutes. Feels like a lifetime with you right now. This is great. The next matchup, OKC Energy versus Tulsa. The players you picked are Eric Bird and Aiden Daniels. Let's start with Eric Bird at Tulsa.
Yeah, I think from an offensive and a defensive perspective, he's going to be a really key player and someone who can tend to be overlooked in this Tulsa side. Last season, amongst midfielders in USL, he was in the 93rd percentile for defensive actions and in the top 20% for pass completion. He is someone who can just play a really clean game from your defensive midfielder and sort of be the cog to let everything else happen around him. And for someone in that DM spot for this Tulsa side, that's huge. If you think about Lebo Moloto and the creativity that he can bring, that's something that Bird really facilitates. But now if you think about Jorge Luis Corrales trying to bomb up the wing, he'll be huge there. Joaquin Rivas freed to play a little bit less in terms of tracking back because you've got such a solid presence with Bird. It facilitates their offense in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a defensive midfielder. So I think he'll be really important.
That's really cool. Do you think he'll have a defensive midfield partner that'll kind of protect, or is he good at that as well?
Optimally, he would be in partnership with Melota, who can sort of pull the strings from deeper. I mean, if you think about the best players in terms of playing a through ball, progressing it from deep, but also being able to bomb upward, that's the definition of Melota's game.
Yeah.
But I think you could see him partnering with someone, and he has a little bit of that box to box in him.
That's awesome. Tulsa, they have such. I'm glad you picked like a less known player because they do have so many players this year that I'm excited to see. You know, a lot of them attacking, and I believe they were pretty solid last year defensively. But we'll get to that in a second. I think. Let's move on to Aiden Daniels of OKC.
Sure. When you watched him in Colorado Springs last season, I think you were just struck by some of that raw talent. Really good tight control on the ball, a really good dribbler. He can sort of run a game as a number 10 or playing out wide and cutting in. And as a result of that, he was in the top 15% of midfielders for expected assists and shot attempts.
Mm.
And in terms of now moving over to OKC, who was dead last in goals scored per game last season, he's going to be vital. They've really retooled. I mean, you think about Vilian Biev on the wing, Kuramoto deeper in the midfield. The back line has changed pretty significantly. They recognize the fact that there was a real need to address the issues that were underlying this team. And I think Daniels is going to be the cog in that. You've seen him look really nice for Canada in a couple of international appearances in recent weeks. And the hope for the energy is that he carries over that level of performance into the USL campaign.
Absolutely. Ryan, I think you have a few thoughts about the matchup tonight. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Oklahoma City has not beat Tulsa since 2018, and in that time they've played 5 times, and it's been 4 consecutive 1-1 draws up until the last time they played each other in 2020 with a 3-2 win for Tulsa. March 17th, 2018 was the last time OKC actually beat Tulsa at home as well. So this has definitely been a derby match that's been controlled mostly by FC Tulsa in recent history. And that was almost the opposite of what it was when it began, when it seemed like OKC were the stronger club when when both sides had entered the league.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, the new ownership have really breathed a lot of life into this club, and OKC has just kind of stayed the same. But John, you mentioned a lot of retooling on both sides, actually, and so maybe you can expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the big retoolings has been the OKC back line, and especially those center back spots. The defense statistically was maybe a little bit better than the offense was, but if you watched just the level of organization and communication between the center backs, it was dismal. And so Mitchell Osmond's come over from Indy 11, and more importantly, Connor Donovan, the longtime North Carolina FC player. And I think together they can really form a decent partnership. At the same time, some of the same components are still there. You think about Zach Ellis Hayden, who's perfectly fine on the right. It's just a question for me of trying to integrate a lot of new players and still stay competitive in this playoff race, trying to nip that 4th place spot. And then versus Tulsa, who, yes, they've retooled, but you're bringing back a strong base with the back line, Sean Lewis in goal, Meloto in the middle. It's just the level of continuity and the level of talent, dare I say, is at a different tier for this Tulsa side when I'm thinking about these two.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe OKC's coach John Pascarella started last year, right? I forget. I'm sorry if that is incorrect, but this is 2 coaches that Encian's been there, but he just started getting support last year, so it's almost like this is his 2nd year with the new look and with so much support with such good players. And Pascarella, last year seemed a little chaotic, especially the way you're describing it there and the way it looked on tape. Hopefully this year, for me, this is a really interesting matchup in that we can watch both teams and just kind of get a gauge where they are. A lot of the first few weeks is that, but these two to me are such a mystery because of the retooling, because of the added players, because of it only being kind of the 2nd year to really secure things in both of these teams. This will be a fun Oklahoma matchup, I think, little cross-state rivalry, if you will. We don't get a lot of those in this league. Any other thoughts, John?
Yeah, just excited for it. And I'm especially excited to see this Tulsa team in action because I think they have a really high ceiling. And it's just a question of NCN getting things to gel and really putting this talent to the best use.
Completely agree. That is John Morrissey. He's the USL tactics guru. One of my favorites online right now. So much so that I had to start bring him into our program as much as we could. John, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing those weekly things with me, man. Appreciate it.
Of course, thank you guys for the opportunity and excited for another season.
Yeah, man. Let's go.
All right. See y'all.
Alan Underwood's joined us, and Ryan is here. Ryan, you've spoken a few times, but I haven't said hello. How's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm ready for another season, and I at least wanted to say within that FC Tulsa chat, I think we had said on our preview show, it's going to be really interesting with them in the Central Division this year, along with OKC making the move eastward, if you will, or taking that St. Louis FC honor of moving conferences. But yeah, I think if we're talking about really high ceilings, FC Tulsa could very well finish top 2 of this, what I think will be a really competitive division outside of Louisville.
I agree. And man, you mentioned that Tulsa taking the reins of, switching sides from St. Louis. And I kind of view them as a St. Louis, like they've really brought in some interesting players and they still have a lot of like the middling players that are going to make up their base. And so St. Louis, I feel like was like that, almost like they could be something so good. And it's kind of up to the coach to mold them into something really impressive. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about Tulsa. We'll see if they can outperform St. Louis because, St. Louis never really quite got it done. But it was fun, obviously, for me, especially that last season. Alan, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us. Oh, Alan, I think you're muted, buddy.
They muted
There
me
it
on my
is.
way in. Usually it's unmuted. I'm not used to unmuting myself.
Well,
No, it's weather's going all right down here. It's a nice warm day, so a nice fresh beer to kind of celebrate the first day of the season. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to a couple of one probably not a super enticing matchup, but you're right. I think the OKC and Tulsa matchup is definitely one that I've had my eye on since they announced it as where are these teams going to be. It's a good early matchup.
yeah, we were talking about it. I'm going to hit it again because I was so excited once John came on. He talked about 4 different players, and I totally forgot on Atlanta United 2 is Robbie Mertz. So at least we get to watch Robbie Mertz play for Atlanta, moving down from the Riverhounds. Otherwise, there are some academy players I'm going to watch for sure, as I always do, but you never get too excited about like the tactical breakdown of Atlanta United 2. So.
No, but I think seeing Louisville, I almost said Louisville, and then everyone would hate me on the internet.
Only the Midwesterners would hate you.
Fair. But for this cross East-West matchup, Louisville does play some teams over here, including San Diego. So I'm watching it more for how is Louisville going to set up? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Are they going to start out slow like they've done the past couple seasons, or is this a season where like, hey, we need to step up right away? I think they lost 4 of the first 6 last year. And I think the same the year before. It's been a very slow start for them. So it'll be interesting to see if, maybe not opening up your season against Pittsburgh, but rather Atlanta gets you on the right foot. But I'm really excited to see how Louisville sets up, how they play, especially this early season. There's so many unknowns. Everyone's been like super quiet about streaming matches or giving information. So it's been a little bit difficult, I think, to get a grasp on a lot of these teams because it has been a lot of radio silence from outside of like, here's the lineup, here's the score, and some things maybe happened during the match.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see some games in person, not in person, but like live, and be able to watch 90 and see what these teams are going to start looking like.
Me too. Absolutely. Next up, we're going to have Tyler Sorrels. He's going to sign on. He is an editor for LouCoopers.com, obviously part of Louisville Coopers. You see him online quite a bit. I enjoy his tweets. And honestly, not a lot of guys are covering Louisville, so he was a perfect option. Although we did go through a few guys before he's coming, but he might be on site, so that'd be pretty cool. We got Carson in our chat saying that it might be a little rainy tonight, as it is here in St. Louis.
They're doing really awesome stuff with the vaccine distribution in
Hmm.
Louisville. So if you're there, take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think we'll probably mention that to Carson or Taylor. I mean, sorry. Yeah, they're offering. You can sign up for the vaccine and you get a free ticket tonight, or you can sign up for a future and you can get it. I think you can get it there tonight. And then you can sign up for a future vaccine there. And then once you get that vaccine, you get a free ticket, something like that. So, man, that's so cool for Louisville to do that and to support that and to donate money basically to that cause. That's pretty awesome. Should we have a vaccine check-in? Is that good or is that bad? I think Ryan and I were talking off air. So Ryan's vaccinated and you've waited your 2 weeks, right? You're feeling okay?
Yep, I've gone through both shots, and my 2 weeks was Wednesday of this past week.
Nice. Yeah, I got another week and a half, I think, before I'm fully vaccinated, but I got that second shot. Felt sick for a good 24 hours or so, like the worst hangover on the planet. Alan, how about you, man? I'm sure you're vaccinated because you're teaching, bud.
Yeah, we're back in the classroom with kids. Yeah, my 2 weeks was quite a while ago. I don't even remember when it was, mid-March maybe.
Yeah.
24 hours of just gunk. But San Diego just announced that the supporters section is going to be vaccine or test mandatory. So they're trying to allow
LAFC is doing the same.
Yeah, like less space. So like just that one section, and you have to have tickets, and you have to like it seems pretty smart to try to keep people safe, but also encourage that normal environment of drumming and chanting and stuff. And I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, but it's nice that a lot of these teams are using the community and their teams to drive support for these things and offer it to some folks. I know locally they set up a thing through one of the local hospitals where you can volunteer through the locals, and at the end of the day, if they usually do, but they have shots left over, you get a shot because you've been volunteering. So there's been a lot of that, which is great. The teams are using that social capital to try to push for, positive outcomes in their community. So it's cool that Louisville's doing that. I would love to see other teams take them up on that offer of, hey, how can we help through our local stadium or getting people here? How can we help people get vaccinated who otherwise may not have access or might be having trouble finding it? It's super cool that they're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna want to be at that game anyway, so why not get a shot there while you're there? That's perfect. That is good. I don't think about access much. I'm in the city, so it's not that hard for me. So it is still a problem countrywide. We still got a long way to go. What are we at? Something about 38%, something like that. So I want to stop wearing my mask all the time. Although Ryan said he doesn't mind it.
Yeah, I don't mind when I'm out and about. When I'm teaching, it gets pretty hot because I talk a lot. But I don't mind when I'm hopping in and out. In fact, now it's like I went to one place and the person helping me wasn't wearing one, and I was like standing back from the stand. Like it just feels it's like a different reality now. So
it is.
Yeah.
Pony just joined us. How's it going, Pony? We're talking about COVID. Isn't that the best subject to talk about right now?
Yeah, best thing ever. I mean, it's what 2020's been all about.
Yeah.
And this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. But, while we're on this subject, it is interesting. Obviously, we're talking about what our local clubs are doing as far as COVID. And it is, talking to Jake, he implied, and basically he did say it actually, that it's local governments are really going to kind of rule the day again, just like last year. Right. And so, obviously things are opening up more, but individual clubs and whatever local governments are able to do, that's what's going to dictate how safe everybody is. And so, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Remember, New Mexico played most of their games away, and that was a big deal when they were choosing who should play in the Open Cup. A lot of those guys were upset that New Mexico didn't make it because they did have such a disadvantage. And I think the wins and the points, it was so close that they felt like they deserved to be in the tournament. So I think it's going to be better. We're not going to deal as much with that this year, but fingers crossed, they got to have a few games at their stadium before the end of the season. I'm hoping it happens again this year. It opens up little by little. Pony, what's it like at SEC? You haven't actually talked about what they're doing in Sacramento. I don't know if you keep up with it.
To a certain extent, they actually, I think they finished a friendly about an hour ago today.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually were playing. They hosted Real Monarchs. I believe it was a 2-0 win for them. But they did a good job, and I think they're gonna be doing like what a lot of teams are doing, where it's like that 25 to 30% capacity, where you have to wear a mask and all this, have to social distance when possible. And if they're going to do that, I kind of like what they're doing. I think most teams could take that same approach, where we want to get back 100% capacity as fast as possible, but at the same time, you don't want to get someone sick and have any complications because they went to a game at your place. So if it's going to get traced back to that, it's just going to be a disaster for the entire league. And better safe than sorry at this point. I think all the teams in USL right now could survive on a 50% or lower capacity for one more year. And if we could do that, we'll get back into a spot where we could return to full capacity and hopefully have 5 or 6 teams who are getting 10,000 fans per game in the 2022 season. I think that's to me the goal. This is just a stopgap year for attendance wise.
Soccer's a funny one too, in that most soccer fans, I think we've actually been surprised that this isn't always the case, especially this last year. We figured that out, but mostly soccer fans are pretty progressive thinking folks. And so, we were watching the SKC game last night, and my wife, she's got a lot of anxiety about masks and all that. Although now we're vaccinated, she's been a lot more laid back, but she's watching the game. She's always watching how many people are really close to each other, who's got masks on, who doesn't. And she's like, oh, they're actually doing good. And I was like, well, it's Kansas City. It's on the Kansas side, and soccer folks are pretty progressive. Looks like they're doing a pretty good job. And she's like, oh, they're not in Orlando. That explains it. It's Florida,
Yeah,
but go ahead.
I think it was the Inter Miami game where like the supporter section was just like slammed, like still made me feel uncomfortable. And then that's the other thing. It's like you got to do some research and see if it is one of those. A lot of those teams are doing that vaccine or testing, but even then, like it's within 72 hours. There's no guarantee if it's a test that you're absolutely safe, and you need to have still masked up. But it's it is a little bit weird watching these games halfway thinking, man, that's a pretty low turnout for this match, and then reminding yourself that there's still limited capacity, and then when you see those stands full, it's the opposite. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I will say, everyone has that moment where they're like, oh man, live fans make a huge difference. And last night for me, it was SKC. There was like a really close call when the ball was in the corner, and Busio was called for kicking it out, and they gave the ball to Orlando. And I just heard these Kansas City fans just go nuts. And that is the thing that's like, I miss being at a soccer game, because I'd be one of those guys just screaming at the player, right? Or at the ref, just like trying to rally things for my team. I miss that so much. It was cool to hear last night for sure.
I was talking to the ticket rep today. I went and picked up the season ticket scarf from the local shop, and he was telling me it's like right now we're at 33%, which gets most of our season ticket members in. But I think everyone's kind of targeting like that mid-June date, as especially in California, like if everything stays the same and the governor kind of changes his mind, he's like, we might be up to 50 to 75% capacity pretty easily in mid-June. And I was surprised, but also like, well, if things are getting better and we're vaccinating folks, then sure. But they were talking like right now we're keeping it limited, but we're setting things up and preparing with like group sales and youth soccer league teams sales to try and because we can start fitting some more people in. And that's the other group that I think kind of misses out when you do some of these like COVID restrictions, is you miss out on some of those youth soccer opportunities where you have to keep it limited to like 4 or 6 tickets. You're not going to get a whole team in. And so I'm a little bit excited for that, as well as that opportunity for some of our, youth clubs and youth teams to be able to get into stadiums and see their future happen on the pitch as well.
Yeah, Andy King jumped in the chat. Andy, I don't know if you've been on the show as far as in our chat before. That's pretty cool that you did tonight. He says California, rather Orange County, is at 1/3 capacity now, but he's expecting 2/3 pretty soon. Bunch of restrictions though, in-seat concessions only. Alan, does that sound right to you? I don't know about this in-seat concession situation.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think if you can do it, I think Orange County is set up in a way that can make it happen. I think some stadiums might not be set up to have that ability, but I think the Orange County one, it's the stadium's all kind of interconnected, so it might be a little bit easier for them to do that. But I think that would be the best idea. I've seen someone's just like, we're not giving you food or drink, like you're on your own. Like you can pregame, but once you're there, we're gonna keep it so that way everyone has their masks on. No one's like, well, I'm eating fries, man. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Kind of each team will have their own approach to food and beverages.
I know in St. Louis we had trash cans right by where they scan your ticket, because everyone's drinking their last beer right up to the last point there. Pony, any other thoughts about that as far as what you think's happening in Sacramento and in California in general?
Well, I haven't been to a game this year. I think granted, I think this is the first home game was today friendly, so I might try to get to a couple this year, but we'll see. It's just, like I said, I've only had one shot so far, so I definitely don't want to go to a crowded area as is until another few weeks, but we'll see as it goes on. It could be a good chance, but I'm still that. I would never as a crowd person to start. And with all this, it made me more anxious than normal in crowds. So we'll see, but hopefully we can get to one game as long as it's not, 11,000 people packed into a small area for a long period of time. Maybe I'll just watch it from the levee patrol vantage point up on the outside of the stadium for once. I always just run into them when I'd go to games. I know them.
That's great. Yeah, I was talking with Ryan before the show, and he was like, "Yeah, North Carolina is going to open up all the way pretty soon, right? As far as the state level." Ryan?
Yeah, that should be June 1st here in North Carolina.
So I turned to my wife and I was like, "Yeah, I bet Missouri's about to open up." I was like, "When does Missouri open?" Down here in the Bible Belt, it's never been closed. So, the city has been and the county has been, but as far as the state of Missouri, they didn't really have any rules whatsoever. So there's that, it's different everywhere, guys. And that's what we're going to be dealing with. That's what the league's dealing with. It's got to be tough. But, each club is, balancing, let's be honest, they're balancing money and safety. And it's a hard thing to do. So, Evan, just in time. Go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It'll be interesting to see with like traveling fans when that starts picking up and those opportunities. Because I know in the past they've had mandated teams hold sections open for visiting fans. And I wonder if when and if that comes back this season, or if it's, because you obviously want to keep your local fans engaged, and some teams you might have to get to 75 to 100% capacity before you feel like you can open those visiting fans up. So that's what I'm also keeping my eye on is what the league's doing and enforcing some of those rules, or if they just are going to be like, it's up to the individual team if they want to offer those ticket packages as well to visiting fans. Because that's part of the joy of it too, is that cross, community, but also that brings cross pollination. So I'm keeping my eye on the ability for fans to travel as well as kind of an interesting conversation to keep an eye on as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's change the subject here. I just noticed Taylor is on. Taylor, I'm sorry if you've been waiting a while. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're able to make it. Where are you? Are you at home or are you at the stadium?
I am in between. I'm at actually grabbing a bite to eat before I head to the stadium. I've got my whole family's going to the game tonight, so we're grabbing some grub and then drinking some cervezas gigantes and getting ready to go.
Nice. You got family. You got kids. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
So what does the family entail? What do we got here?
Well, we have 7 season tickets. So I have me, my wife, and I have 3 kids. The oldest one is 11. My youngest one is 4. And then my dad and my stepmom come. So
Oh
we've
my
all got tickets right
gosh.
together. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's
family
fun.
affair. That's amazing.
Well, it's been that way
Not
since
any
the
other way,
beginning.
was it?
But I saw that my Instagram story popped up today. 7 years ago today, I think, or no, 6 years ago today was the Louisville City played a game against Oklahoma City at Slugger Field, and it hailed during the national anthem. And so we called it the "What So Proudly We Hailed" game. But that was my son's 5th birthday.
Ooh, very
So,
good.
yeah, that's why it popped up. And I was like, I'll never forget that. That was really crazy.
That is so cool. So you're driving there. It's raining here in St. Louis. Carson in Louisville said that it might be rainy tonight. So what is it looking
raining,
like
yeah.
to you? Yeah.
I mean, it's normal. It's spring in Kentucky, and it always rains the most inconvenient times. The Derby's next week, and it's probably going to rain then too.
Yeah.
But we're here for it. Racing Louisville opened their game a couple weeks ago in a rainstorm as well, and so it's just kind of something that most of us soccer fans are pretty much used to at this time of year.
Great game. Great kits. Louisville Racing.
Oh yeah, we're pleased with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. So Taylor, I want to say you are editor at LouCoopers.com, so you're obviously an integral part of Louisville Coopers, the supporter group for Louisville City. Tell me about what the plan is this year, man. What is everyone at the supporter group talking about this year? What's the scoop on what's going on?
Trying to figure out what new normal looks like. We have pretty much an annual change in leadership with the Coopers. But that we've got, they've let us go to 50% capacity at Lynn Family Stadium so far. Like our first match, we get to do that, and so that's great. So there's gonna be more people in the supporters section. We've got more capos than we've ever had before, and feel free to express your own opinions about whether or not you think that's a good idea. But that's what we do, and people seem to like it. And so trying to figure out what to do going forward, because things are in such flux in terms of what can we do, what can we do. What's safe to do, obviously, but we're just really trying to get engagement back up. And it's a crazy time. Soccer is like just exploded here in the city, kind of with racing coming to town, especially. And so, but it's all good. Like there's a lot of nervous energy that's kind of pent up. We're just trying to figure out how to direct it where we need to.
Man, that's well said, actually. I think a lot of us are feeling that as well. Can you talk about the team? Louisville's been good forever. I think I made some kind of statement in the notes about you guys being about, if you're a Lou fan, it's pretty good to be a Lou fan as long as you don't mind a few branding mistakes here and there that were corrected.
You take the good with the bad. It's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, solid roster year after year after year. You return so many guys. You bring in some youth USMNT guys. Tell me about what you're excited for this year as far as the team is concerned.
Just to see them, and then I think some cool things, which we saw a little bit of last year, is that we're trying to be a lot more multiple in the way we play. I love James O'Connor, but I mean, in those first years, Louisville City basically had one way they were going to play, and that was it. And it was very successful, so you can't knock it. But one thing that John Hackworth has really brought since he's been here is trying to give us the ability to play at a couple of different looks. It somehow or another ends up looking like a 4-3-3 at the end of the day, anyway. But I can, I know this season because everybody has to play the same opponents 4 times, which I'm not a fan of, but it is what it is. You can't look the same way going into every game. And so I think this team, because we have a 3-month preseason, is going to be really prepared to kind of adapt and adjust styles to whatever situations they happen to be in. And we're pretty versatile from a personnel standpoint because we got a lot of players who can play multiple positions. The only place where I have concern about us is central defense, really. But other than that, we can kind of look however we need to look, and we're still going to be usually, obviously really dynamic in attack. I've got I don't know what we're going to do about central midfield necessarily. I like Tyler Gibson. He's not Stevie Williams. So it's kind of going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But, I trust this group to be successful this season for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Hackworth has definitely proven himself, and I do think adaptable is maybe their best quality, Louisville. I really love that you mentioned that being multiple is a really good quality for Louisville, because I totally agree. There are so many games where I thought Louisville was out of it. How many times in the playoffs especially did you think, oh, Louisville's gone, Pittsburgh's going to put them away, they're going to kill them? They killed them last time. Now look what happened in the playoffs. You think about Indy 11. I was at that game where it was like, okay, well, let's go home. And then, they scored the game winner in the last, in extra time, I believe. If I'm not mistaken,
that's right.
throwing on like 4 attackers. Like, they're willing to adapt and to change and to throw in the kitchen sink. And so, man, Louisville's such a fun team to watch. And as far as Speedy Williams, John from USL Tactics mentioned the loss of him and the Tyler Gibson perhaps replacing him. I don't know if you know about other guys in that role, but I don't know if Tyler Gibson alone is going to be able to fill that.
It won't be him by himself. We're going to have to tactically figure out how to adjust to that. I mean, Tyler, I think is a really good passer, sees the field really well, a really intelligent player, and so is Speedy. But I think he adds a little bit more, maybe steal and bite in the back. But he's not that hasn't got the pace that Speedy did. And Speedy was a fabulous player, really intelligent guy. And we're unlucky not to keep him around. But I think Tyler, like I said, Tyler doesn't fill all those gaps. So there's gonna be voids. But I can only imagine we've got so many midfielders. We're just going to find a way to plug one in, maybe beside him or in a transition role. Sounds like something Paolo DiPiccolo is pretty well suited for. So I have a feeling that's what we're going to do. But how that plays out is we'll see.
Yeah, and it'll be fun. Like Akil Watts is someone I used to really enjoy watching with the U.S. men's national team, at Fulham, and then he went to you guys. He played some center mid, and he's a speedy guy. So that would be fun to see him in that role every once in a while.
He played over the last weekend. We had a friendly against Pittsburgh, and he started in the 3 at the back, which I thought was really interesting. Like, we've deployed him at fullback. We've had him there. He's definitely a good midfielder too. So he might just kind of be a utility player that we can put in all kinds of different places. A little bit like Mal McCabe, but taller.
Taller? I didn't notice that. He's tall? Is he like 6 foot?
Yeah, he's taller than Niall, which doesn't take a lot, but yeah.
Sure. I don't know if Niall would appreciate you saying that about him. He's probably...
He'd take it in stride, I'm sure.
Okay, cool. I just... Those what is he, Irish? Scottish guys, I just worry about him.
Yeah, you can get into a lot of trouble if you misbrand an Irishman.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's been enough years that you'll be okay, Taylor.
Yeah, I think you'll forgive me.
Okay.
Well, Taylor, any other thoughts before we go? It's a little early, but we've had a good conversation.
You guys, like with his kids and his entire extended family going to a soccer game. Let him enjoy that. Jesus.
Yeah, I gotta choke down too.
Nice.
That's sad. I think we have to at least get a final score prediction from him.
Yeah.
Oh.
For Atlanta, I don't know. Like, these two teams are always hard to gauge, and they come out of the gate really hot and fast and vertical most of the time. I know Atlanta hasn't really set the world on fire since they've been in the league, but they always have talented players. So I think there's going to be a feeling out there. I mean, I think we're going to win the game, but if you're going to ask me to pick a score, I'd say let's go with 3-1 Louisville City. Although they've got a really good goalkeeper, so I may be being really high expectations there. But we'll see.
All right, so I'm hearing bet the over.
Yeah, I would. What's the line, Pony? You probably know it by heart.
I actually could look that up. Hold on.
We'll get it later. Taylor, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the game tonight, buddy. I'm jealous I'm not watching live soccer like you are tonight.
That's all right. Thanks for calling me, guys, and anytime. And appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. Have a good night.
Night, guys.
Phil.
Huh?
I'm so glad that the person who just joined the call, in fact, just joined the call, because I guess I can't set it up without giving away who it is. Austin, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I got you, buddy. Loud and clear. Folks, this is Austin Gwinn, who is the head of digital and communications for One FC Tulsa. And now I was at work earlier. I thought of a question for Austin. I'm going to ask it to you. What is the part of your job that people think is part of your job but isn't part of your job, and why is that player signings and acquisitions?
You would think it was player signings and acquisitions, but in reality, it's that we manage Matt Sheldon and Michael Cunningham's YouTube channels.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So now you're Matt Sheldon's agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. In the player signings and acquisitions model of it, it's we make the decisions on whether Matt or Michael are in the lineup or not, or whether they're the captain of the team or not. Our Instagram account especially kind of lives and dies with what Matt and Michael are doing on a day-to-day basis with the club.
And is that easier for you or harder for you?
I mean, it means more followers for us,
right?
But it definitely, translates to probably more, unfriendly than friendly fans at times. But that's okay.
Live by the sword, you die by the sword, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm thinking. Oh, sorry. I was thinking of Matt Sheldon. I remember back in the USL YouTube days. I forget what team he was on, but there would be people in the YouTube chat every game talking about him, and that kind of confused me at first until I learned who he was.
So I know when he was in St. Louis, he was doing the tactical videos. Is that what we're talking about here, Austin? Can you give us a little more insight?
Yeah, so he has this Become Elite YouTube channel, which he does an absolutely fantastic job with. If anybody kind of wants the day in the life behind the scenes of an FC Tulsa player, on a week-to-week basis, that's what he's doing on his YouTube channel, which he has. He's either approaching or has just hit 400,000 YouTube subscribers. And then one of our other guys, Michael Cunningham, a British forward, who was on trial with us for most of the preseason, and we signed him late in the preseason. He actually has over 850,000 YouTube subscribers. So between the two of them, we're over 1 million YouTube subscribers to people on our team. And so it obviously translates to a lot of social media follows, but they're very vocal as well about the players they watch week in and week out on YouTube. And so, they want to see their guys in the 18 and in the 11. And
why the hell?
Our game engagement. Go ahead.
Why the hell isn't Mbappe starting tomorrow? Tonight. What's going on there?
Well, no, they want to see those two guys because you follow them week in, week out in training, and then they're not in the 18 all of a sudden, and then Austin has to clean up the scraps and go, "Hey guys, YouTube views don't drive our roster."
Austin's got a push broom, just cleaning up the crap at the end of the day.
Or something along those lines. No, but actually, I do have a legitimate question based off of that. Was that a weird thing for you to try to adjust to? Like, how is that? Like, because obviously you have a job and you have a team of people that has a job that kind of has to deal in that space a little bit. And now you have these two guys that come in, and I don't know, maybe you're licking your chops a little bit because of their engagement, but also you have to sort of figure out how that fits in with what I imagine at the beginning of the season you wanted the digital side of FC Tulsa to be, and those might not necessarily line up one for one, right?
I actually don't know if it changes too much about what we do. Obviously, we're very cognizant of when we include either of those guys in our content. And I would say the channel that probably it affects the most is Instagram, just because a lot of the YouTube viewers for both guys are skew younger, and so that's going to be their preferred social media channel. So we are kind of paying attention, and so when we do a carousel with a bunch of photos, it's typically a good idea to include one of either Matt or Michael. But on the whole, as far as like the type of content we choose to do, or what announcements we're making or how we're making certain announcements, it doesn't affect it all. Obviously we like when our followers jump up a bunch when one of those players does something, or we post something about them, but we're not looking to post a Matt Sheldon picture every single day just to get a bunch of likes. We've got a lot of what I think are marketable USL players on our team, and we want to make sure we spread the love equally. Especially with some of our kind of premier off-season moves we've made. A guy like Jerome Kiesewetter, we want to make sure we're featuring him plenty in our content. And Matt and Michael too. I mean, we want to show love to everybody. So I don't think it really changes that much, other than we just know, hey, there's a picture of Matt in here. We should expect to see a spike in likes or in shares on this specific post.
Well, you mentioned Kiesewetter there. Let's talk about the roster, because you guys made some massive upgrades this year, and there were massive upgrades last year as well with the changeover in ownership. What do you think about this year? NCN had more toys last year. This is going to be a little crazy, and to pile onto that, I'm not sure where you were in our ranking episode the other day. But we all do view Tulsa as just like one of the possible top teams of the year. You could take it all the way for sure. So maybe talk about the roster and how people are viewing you this year.
Yeah, I think, last year was more of a, like, we were kind of a surprise team, I guess. I don't think many people expected a lot from Tulsa because of just the history of the franchise. But the investment was there in the roster last year with, like you guys mentioned, the changeover in ownership to the Kraft brothers. They understand that part of having success in this league is spending money on your roster. And so, we spent, relative to the rest of the league, a lot more than this franchise ever had before. And so when we made the playoffs, it wasn't a surprise for those of us internally, but we understand kind of across the country, Tulsa's not maybe been the most relevant franchise as far as the standings are concerned. And so, we understand we were kind of that surprise team, but I think now the expectations, like you guys mentioned, are a lot higher for this club. And so I think the moves that we've made in the offseason, that Coach Inti has made in the offseason reflect that. And so this week leading up to tonight's match, he told the media on multiple occasions that the goal for this year is obviously, like every other team, to win a championship, but we fully expect to have a home playoff game. And so you guys are smart. That means being number 1 or 2 in the Central Division to make that happen. So that's kind of, I guess, where we see ourselves this year. That's where we see the roster, where the investment has kind of landed in the roster. And so, with guys like Jerome Kiesebetter or Jorge Corrales, who I think are 2 players that are at their position, some of the best in the league. When we've got those guys all over the field, I think that's probably a fair expectation that you guys have, and it's one that we have also.
Definitely. Now let's talk about, we've heard rumors about a stadium possibly being built in Tulsa. How many more, if you were to guess, how many more, home openers do you think you guys have left in Oak One?
One Oak? Yeah.
One Oak, pardon me. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. No, I will say this. Obviously, the goal, I think, for every franchise in this league is to have a soccer-specific stadium. We really enjoy One Oak. Like, it's obviously not ideal to be playing on a baseball field. I think that goes without saying. But when the Kraft brothers came in and purchased this team and built out the front office like they did, one of the first changes that this franchise made was shifting the field 90 degrees to create kind of more soccer specific sight lines. And that's something that the baseball stadium didn't have. They had, the way they did the field is not like, I come from Nashville SC, where obviously in the USL we played in a baseball stadium as well. And so I was just used to seeing it a certain way, and that's how teams like Memphis and Louisville did it. But then for some reason Tulsa decided to do it kind of long ways, and what it did was it took a lot of seats out of play and made for some bad sight lines. So I think when we did that prior to the 2020 season, it was just like, oh man, this venue can actually be good for soccer as far as a fan experience is concerned. And we take a lot of time with the game day experience and the kind of show we put on, both with cryo. So when players run out, they run out into through smoke, and when we score goals, there's fireworks along the sideline and smoke going off behind each net, like smoke cannons. And so those are the kind of things that we know create a really good soccer atmosphere. I do think that a stadium is something that we've all got our eye on in the future. And I know that that's an investment that our ownership wants to make down the road. I don't know that I could give a specific number for how many, opening days we have left at One Oak, but I know that it's a venue that we like, and we think that, can make a good soccer atmosphere. I feel like we've done that. But the ultimate goal is to have our own soccer specific stadium. So, let's say within the next 5 years. I think that's probably a fair assessment, and maybe it's sooner than that.
It's a wonderful goal. While you're on, do you have any other things as far as the club aspirations, what they'd like to be doing? I'm sure that's something you guys talk about regularly. What do you see them doing in the next couple of years before that?
I mean, I think you're going to see just the investment in the club continue, but not just the investment like in the on-field product, which I think, as I've already mentioned, is always going to kind of be there. But we invest a lot in our community. I know you guys have seen our announcements as it relates to, the centennial around the Tulsa Race Massacre. We donated $25,000 to the building of Greenwood Rising, which is going to be a historical center that's going to open this summer around the 100-year kind of anniversary celebration / memorial. We've started a fully funded elementary school soccer league that we've donated $15,000 to getting up and running in North Tulsa, which is a pretty under-resourced area. of our city. We're doing things like Project Engage, where we're bringing police officers together with children in community centers and helping to create relationships between those two groups through video games like FIFA. And so it's these kind of different community initiatives that we're chasing all the time, because we know that it's more than just about the 90 minutes on the pitch. It's about what we're doing day in and day out in our community. I think that's the beauty of a lot of clubs around the world, is all their fans feel like they kind of have a piece of the club, and you know, they're a little bit of an owner, and they have a little bit of say in what happens. And we want Tulsa to feel like that. And we know that for fans to invest like that in us, we need to invest back into them. So, you know, making sure that we're bringing soccer to areas that haven't ever had it before, and that, you know, it's not just Greenwood, or it's not just downtown Tulsa. It's really all of Tulsa and the surrounding community. So we can be that community club. I know everybody talks about it. So I think that kind of what our focus is right now, obviously it's on winning, but we want to be that community club, and we want to win off the field just as bad as we want to win on it.
It's massive. And, you know, I knew I could talk. I know you, Austin. We talk, you know, a decent amount. And I knew I could ask that question, and that's exactly what you would answer with. And that's the culture that you like to see in a front office. It's very clear that you guys have made that a priority with the changeover, especially. And I've been excited to see what you guys can do. And, you know, I'm just hoping that that's how every communications director answers, even players and coaches, you know, like that's the goal. I think even for USL, the league proper, you know, I think that's what they want to happen all over the place. Obviously, Oakland is killing it. You guys are doing a great job. There's a lot of clubs that are doing a good job of that. We just need to take everybody to that point. And if we're going to talk about culture, there's one thing I really wanted to bring up because Michael Insian was really nice. He was nice enough to come on and talk about Fabian Bastidas. That was like such a huge deal back in the day. I didn't warn you about this. This is big stuff, but I'm going to be positive here. He came on, and it was really scary for him to come on to a show like ours because, you know, who knows what we're going to ask or what we're going to say to him. And he came on, he was real honest with how he dealt with that situation. And Fabian played a season last year and was great, right? No mistakes. Possibly the guy learned something in the process. A lot of cancel culture going around in the last several years, and this is an example of not that, right? I would say that's a success story. I'm sorry I didn't warn you about that, Austin, but it's such a good thing to me that I thought I'd bring that up and really praise your coach for taking a risk there and it paying off, in my opinion.
Well, thanks for saying that. This is probably a terrible example, but it's the one that just popped into my head. You guys know when we're playing FIFA and you find a player and it's not like, you know, promising prospect or whatever they say. It's like a leader of men. Like, I feel like that perfectly describes Michael Insian. Like, he is an absolute leader of men. Like, he is our head coach on the field, and he's the one making the lineup decisions and making the substitution decisions and talking to the fourth official on the sideline. But he's in our meetings in the front office. I mean, we're talking to him. He is a leader in the Tulsa community. He's a Black leader in the Tulsa community. And he's worn that on his sleeve and you know, kind of been our face for that kind of stuff. And so we were really intentional about when we announced the Greenwood app patches on our jersey just a couple of weeks ago, that he was prominently featured in that content. I actually saw a tweet from Black Arrow FC today directed at us and said, like, he's the hardest coach in American soccer. And I think they're absolutely right. Like, he is a leader of men. And, you know, we look to him not just to make good decisions on the pitch, but to help guide our franchise in these different aspects. And, you know, Fabian's another example of that, where he felt like he could step in and positively influence somebody's life. And, you know, kind of the soccer was whatever, but it was about making sure that Fabian knew he made a mistake, but knew that also wasn't going to be, you know, the end all be all and what was going to define him moving forward. And, you know, like you mentioned, he played the rest of the season for us and was a positive influence in our locker room, a positive influence at training. He didn't see the most minutes on the field, but he was somebody that the team took in and was a positive part of our club culture. I think, you know, we all realize that, you know, we're doing I feel like a decent job of creating this great culture around our club. And so to have somebody like Coach Insian, that's, you know, now the first African-American have his USSF pro license, you know, the guy that was literally born and raised in Greenwood, like these are the kind of qualities and aspects that we know speaks to our community and speaks to the country at obviously such a difficult time. So to have him is, we're lucky, we're grateful. We don't take him or his influence for granted, for sure.
Yeah, his work with that Greenwood incident, I'm not educated enough to talk about it, but it's been really amazing and really educational for me as well. So I'm glad we were able to fit that in. Back to game day kind of stuff. You are at the stadium right now, and what's it like there? What are you expecting to see today?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a Black Gold Derby, so we're all super excited about that. What a way to start the season. Yeah, I'm standing in the press box right now looking over the pitch. They haven't opened the gates here yet. I think gates open in about 30 minutes. We're still 90 minutes from kick, but the field's set up. It's ready, and I think our team bus gets in here any minute. So we're excited. We're excited for this. We had a fairly rigorous preseason. We had one stretch where we played 3 games in 4 days. I don't think I can remember hearing about something like that since high school soccer.
USL Pro Days.
Oh well, I wasn't around during the USL Pro Days.
When the Eastern Conference teams would play each other 3 games in 5 days, and the third game in that 5-day stretch was for the title.
Oof, yeah, I'm glad we don't have to do that.
A little different, but yeah, no, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I think we're ready. The longer preseason has gone, the better the guys have looked in training. I think like I'm sure everybody is, we're dealing with a couple of knocks here and there, but we're excited about this match. I think this is another prove it moment for the franchise. I feel like last season was full of them, and I feel like this season is going to be too. And I'm literally standing here right next to the wrench. We brought it with us to get some content around the match. We haven't, obviously the franchise hasn't had the wrench for a while, so we're gonna take full advantage of that. But talking to the guys throughout the week, they know this one carries extra importance. It's not just the season opener, but it's the Black Gold Derby. It's the guys down the road, and they don't want to lose, especially this one. They don't want to lose this one. So I expect probably a little bit of a sloppy match. We were here last year in July for our first game back. I don't know if y'all remember that, the first game back after the COVID delay, and it was actually on national TV, and it was a 1-1 draw. Both teams were gassed after 65, 70 minutes because no one had really had any sort of preseason leading up to that restart.
Yeah.
Because of that, and because of the fact that it's turf and the ball can bounce funny sometimes here, I expect something a little sloppy, probably something a little low scoring. But I think that on paper, I'm fully biased. The first rule is acknowledging you're biased. I'm very biased, but on paper, I think that we're gonna have the better 11 and the better 18. So hopefully that translates to the result on the pitch.
Austin, I have a plea for you, because I just watched because 2 of your colleagues have just done this to us. One at Louisville City, one at Atlanta United 2. From here on out, whenever you guys go to tweet a game day lineup, for the love of God, can you please put it in formation?
Man, I'm glad you asked. So that is something we are starting as of today. So you will get not just the 11, which you're going to get the 11 an hour beforehand, but you're also going to get a formation about 15 minutes out. We won't do it right at the hour mark.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we're not going to do it right at the hour mark.
Before it happens. Yeah. And listen, you can lie. That's okay. Like, if the gamesmanship is that you lie, like if coach gives you the wrong formation or whatever you need to do to keep them happy, because I get it, at the end of the day, those are the guys that you have to see a bunch. So whatever you need to do to keep everyone else at your club happy is great. I like Mickey, I like all the guys, I like Trey, we talked to a fair bit of the social media guys for USL teams, given what we do. But please just help us out a little bit one time. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And back in my Nashville days, with Gary Smith as the head coach, he was completely against it. We would never ever be allowed to do it.
Sure.
And we didn't do it last. Yeah, we didn't do it last year. And it was something that I brought up to Coach NC in the offseason. I said, hey, I think this would be something that we could
there's
do
5
that.
guys that would really like you to do this, and he's like, say no more.
Well, here's the other thing too that maybe some people don't think about is on every USL broadcast you see that lineup graphic, and especially if you're in maybe a club that's using Vista to produce your broadcast and isn't as familiar kind of with all the guys in their kind of natural positions. Sometimes you see a lineup that you and we look at, and if I'm just watching, just some other random USL broadcast, I'm like, oh, that guy's definitely not a winger. He's a defensive mid. But, so it's more than just about like what we're doing on Twitter. It's, we need to make sure that through all aspects of what we're doing, we are, saying the right things to our fans, because fans don't like to be lied to, and I hope our fans are smart enough to know that, this guy maybe doesn't play wing and he's instead of,
right.
Eric Bird, he's a central midfielder. So, that was a topic I brought up to coach. Thankfully, he was like, yeah, totally. As long as it's close to kickoff where it might not influence what, and for tonight's example, OKC Energy does. So you'll get it tonight for the first time in at least FC Tulsa history. Yeah.
It's really funny to me how like mercurial that communications managers and social guys, like how those jobs are. You went from Nashville to here. Like, I don't know. Do you have? Is there a bit of like, well, I have to root for every team that I've been with, or is it very much you get stuck into the club that you're at and you kind of, only love that club, and then I'll let you go because you have like more important things to do, maybe like run social media content for a soccer team that's playing a game later.
No, you're good.
Okay.
So I think obviously as a communications person, you have a lot of interaction with players and coaches.
Yes.
And so just building those relationships, I think it automatically makes you root for those guys individually. And so, guys that I was with in Nashville that have either moved up with that club to MLS, like Taylor Washington or Matt LaGrassa, or guys that have moved on to other teams, like maybe Ryan James or Bolu Akinyodi, or Forrest Lasso.
Yep.
Those are guys that like I still text occasionally. I have great relationships with them, and I root for them individually. Now, obviously, Gary Smith and I worked together for 2 years, and while he was maybe an old school coach and was kind of set in his ways, he and I had a great relationship, and
sure.
I want nothing but the best for Nashville FC because I want him to have success, and guys like Taylor Washington, I want him to have a ton of success.
Yep.
But, obviously FC Tulsa is my focus day in and day out, so I can't help but to not root for them as hard as I can.
Sure.
But of course, I'm a sports fan across the board, so whether it's West Ham United, Atlanta Braves, Florida Gators, I have a lot of teams, and I would say while FC Tulsa is the first one, everything else is close second.
Fair enough. Well, my friend, appreciate it. It's always nice to have you guys on. In general, like I just like talking to social media. I think it's because I did it for so long with Tom Paya, but talking to you social guys, things like that, always a great time. You are a very busy man, no doubt. Why don't you sign 8 more players in closing?
I hear. Can I tease? Can I tease a little bit?
Well, I mean, you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't. No.
Okay, so we'll actually have 3 more signings next week. We will announce.
Dang.
Yep. If you just want to leave those in the chat right quick in the call, we'll get an embargo and we'll say Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Great. Thank you so much.
You know the days we like to make announcements already. You're right on top of it.
Cheers. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it so much, man.
Thanks, pal.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Anyway, I am wearing a training kit of a dead club autographed by a coach of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. Thank you so much for asking. Nice to be here. Hey guys,
Switchbacks, are you all ready? This is like the first word you said, not
Phil,
including
I know,
an interview.
like 35% of the team personally, of course.
At least 35.
This would be like if half of St. Louis just popped up somewhere and you were like, all right.
What you guys don't know is Evan is the unofficial GM of Colorado Switchbacks.
Listen, someone had to sign Brendan Burke to be their head coach, and then the inevitable happened.
It's all falling into place. Makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, gentlemen, we are very close to kickoff. What you missed, what I think the guys in the chat might have seen me reacting appallingly to not something that Austin was saying, but in fact, shout out to USL League One. Richmond's keeper just made maybe the best double save I've ever seen in my life. So I got that going on. But in championship news, we got a kickoff here soon. Louisville City opening up against Atlanta United too, like Taylor said. I mean, there's no way, right? Like this is just kind of a hi, welcome home. Here's the coronation for Louisville City.
Well, Ryan, or is it Ryan or Pony looked up the odds? I think we should start there, huh?
We should for those that are allowed to indulge legally to cover.
So current odds for the Louisville match tonight is Louisville at 1.25, a draw is 3.25, and Atlanta winning is 9.
Pony, what do you feel about this? How's your money gonna look after tonight?
I'm not doing this, but I have my bet on Tulsa for later. Actually, but.
If you're looking at the OKC Tulsa one, it's OKC at 3.6, a draw is 3.25, Tulsa 1.9.
Yeah, it looks like the betting is saying that it's probably going to be like Louisville 3-1 or 2-1. That's what they're looking at.
The great news: the state of Pennsylvania has not allowed me to bet on USL Championship, so I'm in the clear. Alan and Phil, for those who are not able to sports bet, essentially, if you bet $1, well, okay, Pony, all right. For you that are not able to in your current state legally sports bet through a casino, essentially, if you put $1 on Atlanta United tonight, you would win 9 if they won.
Oh, I see.
But gambling likes to put everything in terms of 100s because, wouldn't that be fun? 100 turns into 900. Yeah. So be like me. Everyone out there, be like me if you're legally allowed to sports bet in your state, and don't do anything stupid. I bet $5 on an MLS parlay earlier today and lost. Thank you so much to Nashville SC. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah. Looking at what I have, it's expected to probably be at least 3 goals scored, and Louisville is expected to win by probably 2, but could just be 1. It would be like it would be like NFL saying you have a team expected to win by 10 type thing.
Yeah,
more or less.
Well, let's talk about the lineup. As Evan disparaged their lineup announcements, they are not in a formation. But
I just want to make sure that everybody going forward understands I don't really give a shit what your players look like in alphabetical order. I can do that myself.
Or number order, yeah.
Yeah, number is even worse. That one hurts me physically. Alphabetical, I'm like, all right, whatever. This is like school. Number order, I'm like, great. Whoever picked 97's last.
Well, Alan, can you pull up the ESPN lineups? Because it says that Lou City's rolling in a 3-5-2. We heard from Taylor that Akil Watts could be playing as a 3-back center back, perhaps. I think that's what he was hinting at there, which would be really crazy. Why don't you kind of tell us the lineup for Louisville? Because I'm really curious.
So they got Hubbard, keeper. Then they got 3-man back line, Sauhe, Toch, and Watts.
Okay.
They got the midfield. Gomez, kind of a left wing back kind of guy. Tucker Bone, Matoso in the middle, the Piccolo on the right, and then Jimenez on the opposite side on the far right, and then McCabe and Lancaster up top, running a 3-5-2.
That sounds pretty correct to me. Yeah.
And they have it kind of set up that way on their Twitter feed. If you kind of follow in order, keeper, 3 defenders, your 5 midfield, 2 guys up top. So at least it's like you can kind of figure out where they're playing with their lineup. But Atlanta 2 is a mess.
Yeah.
Did you see their CONCACAF Champions League graphics for that?
No.
It is honestly one of the most difficult to follow, or just one of the more poorly designed graphics for an announcement of a lineup.
As far as Atlanta, what they did?
Yeah, for Champions League.
Oh, I'll have to watch for that next time. Big fan. Let's talk about, so I'm just going to say what I think I'm looking for. And based on that lineup, I think Matsoso, I'm really interested to see how he does as the 6, as the holding midfielder. Whoever plays holding midfield, they got to fill Speedy Williams' shoes. And so I'm excited to see what he's like. Evan, you got some opinions about tonight? What are you looking at?
Like you were saying, I think when Taylor was on, Louisville has been defined by either Brian Ownby hero ball in the playoffs. I mean, not defined by, but never hurt. And then John Hackworth is kind of staked a claim to being one of the craftiest managers in the league, which is interesting because that is something he would have picked up on post Philadelphia, right? And I mean, to be fair, he didn't have the players, but so I'd be interested to see how Louisville adapts, and then honestly, more so than how they play this game or how they play Atlanta United 2 this year. I loved his point about how if you're playing the same team 4 times, you cannot play the same formation.
Interesting.
And so I want to see what this 3-5-2, which is apparently either Hack's ideal starting 11 or something resembling a starting 11, changes when they play that third game against whoever in their group.
Yeah, well, and this may be his starting 11 versus someone we should crush. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I mean it very well could be a point. You know, like maybe he gets a little bit of a mind game tactical advantage because they start off against Atlanta United 2, who are not Tampa Bay. Like who are not a team that is going to realistically challenge for the championship title this year.
Yeah, Pony, what do you think? What are your thoughts about this matchup? Maybe the next one too, because this is the last time we're going to talk before that game as well. But maybe you want to work some rankings talk into this as well. This is probably our last time to kind of talk about it.
Yeah, I think the first one, I think Louisville should be taking this one. It's a question of by how much, because I mean, Atlanta is an MLS2 team, and as we talked about in our rankings, there's going to be at least one MLS2 team who is going to be very, very good this year. We don't know who it's going to be. If history is told anything, it's probably not going to be Atlanta, but it'll be somebody. And if it is Atlanta, well, that's always dangerous. But I think it should be Louisville winning by about 2 goals. Is it going to be 2-0, 3-1, or is it going to be some really high-scoring, bizarre game? Because Louisville decides not to play defense. Who knows? But the later one is going to be the interesting one because, again, that gets Tulsa, OKC. And as I've said multiple times, I think Tulsa is very underrated. They were underrated last year, and they made a good run. They were a penalty shootout away from knocking out the team who was runners-up in the West. And they returned a lot of the same players, and they brought in some better players. I mean, Tulsa, to me, is that team who you look at and go, on paper, they should do very, very well this year. Granted, they're in a group with Louisville, who they're not going to be better than. I mean, no matter how good Tulsa is, they're not going to beat Louisville in the standings. That's not happening. But apart from that, you have Indy and Birmingham, who they could be up and down. I could see either of those two teams being good, and I could see them just falling apart and not being remotely relevant. Well, Tulsa, remember last year they were tied for the least losses in the entire USL in the regular season. There's no way you could tell me a team who is tied for the least losses is going to be anything else than above average.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're going to do. They were a good defensive team. They signed better players. Granted, they're playing some better teams this year because their division was not the greatest last year. But Tulsa is a very, very good team. And I think they will win that golden wrench. And I actually have some money on they win tonight. So hopefully they do that. But we'll see. So
I love that. I'm looking at the Central Division right now, and I'm just going to assume Louisville wins it. But second is so up for grabs. And if you look at rosters like between Indy, Tulsa, and Birmingham, it could go anywhere. And that's saying a lot for all 3 of those teams.
Well,
Indy,
and the funny thing is all those teams end up making the playoffs. If that's how it shakes out.
So that's even more fun, really.
Yeah.
What a great conference.
Because then it's seeding. Yeah.
Not to underestimate energy, like we've all talked up energy as well. I think we should move to Alan. Alan, what do you think about tonight?
There's going to be some
final thoughts. Like I said, I'm really excited to see kind of how Louisville approaches this match, and what this 3-5-2 looks like. I'm falling more and more in love with 3-5-2. That combination 3-4-3 as a kind of attacking, but also could be very defensive minded in certain situations. I'm excited to see what Hackworth does with it because I think there's some things that we can learn about 3-5-2 and also a different look from them. And then with Tulsa, Oklahoma City, it's going to be a really the Derby just adds another layer to it, and I'm excited. I know this one's probably not going to have as many fireworks in it, but it's going to be a fun match to kind of check out where Tulsa is going to end up. I wasn't super high on them in the rankings, but they might change my mind tonight.
Ryan, you get to give us the final thoughts before we all do a round table of what we think the score will be tonight. What do you think, Ryan?
I think it'll both be really interesting matches to watch. Louisville, just we'll see how for real they're going to be this year, and it's our expectation that they'll be winning the Central Division at the end of the season. And if they can come out firing on all cylinders, it'll be really interesting. But Tulsa, if they can have a really good game against OKC, they could definitely challenge in this division, and it would set up a really good showdown for once Tulsa and Louisville would be able to finally meet.
Agree. All right, everyone, start thinking. Put on your thinking caps, as they might say in elementary school. It's been a while since I've heard that one.
Do you have the talking stick, Phil?
What'd you say? Sorry.
Do you have the talking stick?
Yeah, I have the talking stick, and you will all listen.
Okay, cool.
This Bush beer is my talking stick.
Oh.
We will all give a final score for the two games tonight. Cheers to live soccer that we're about to watch, live USL soccer. I'm really excited for the season to start. Pony, let's start with you because it was your idea. What do you think the two scores will be tonight?
I'm going to say give me Louisville 3-0 and Tulsa 2-1.
All right, Ryan, I feel like you should be next.
Louisville 2-0, Tulsa and Oklahoma City 1-1.
1-1, not bad. Okay, Alan, let's go to Alan.
I'm going to go 3-1 Louisville and 1-1 in the Tulsa Oklahoma City match.
Yeah. Evan, what do you think?
4-0 for the early game, Louisville. And then I have the Wrench will stay with Austin in his club, but it'll be a 2-2 draw.
What team today scored? New York City FC
5-0 over that team that used to exist in a league that we cover.
Oh my god! Well, yeah. I this is my chance to make fun of Cincy. I forgot it was Cincy.
Did you actually forget it was Cincy? I thought you were doing this as a very pointed thing.
No, it's my brain. I can't think of these kind of things.
Right.
I apologize. I apologize for past, current, and future mistakes in this regard.
Don't worry.
Every day.
Yeah.
Cincy also forgot they were playing that match today.
Oh my god!
Hey! Listen, Nick Haglund scored a great goal.
2 of them
on his own keeper.
2 of them.
Yeah. Man, that hurts though. I want him to do well.
I'm sorry, Phil. You were saying.
I will say 3-0 for Louisville versus Atlanta, and I think I'll agree. Nope, I'm gonna go 2-1 Tulsa. It will be. It might even be. You know what? I'm going to change it. 1-0 Tulsa is what I'm going to say.
That's no fun.
Only because Austin said that it was going to be, a low scoring game.
Can we play I would love to know. And this is an easier one. Is there a red card tonight?
No.
No. Okay.
I say no as well.
Well, because one just happened in Greenville, Richmond, is why I asked in part, because Greenville is now down to 10 men.
Alan, you seem to be thinking. You might have an idea.
I can see like a late double yellow against Atlanta.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's a lot of emotion.
That was me. Like, no, unless it's I think Atlanta's the only one who's going to pick up a red card if they do, but I'm going to say no.
But then again, it's an Oklahoma matchup, rivalry. It could be a good one. It could get chippy.
You don't know how the referee's going to call these fouls.
That too.
I think first game of the season they're going to be more disciplined than that, though.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to sit back, feel each other out. It'll be fun. I'm just so glad the USL has started. I think this is it, boys. Thank you so much for doing this live stream. We have about 7 minutes, probably 6.5 minutes or less until the first game starts. We've talked about the lineups. We've talked to a whole bunch of players and fans that know about the game. Not players, but, fans and
fans.
For
a lot of fans.
Hope you enjoyed the live stream. We finally made it work. So thanks you guys for joining me as well and all the guests.
No worries.
Enjoy the game, everybody. See ya.